All right, look, we're going to cut this out and we're going to talk. You cannot do this to me. It's not fair. God, Zach, we've always gotten each other through because we've never been afraid to share. You've closed yourself off and I feel helpless. I don't know what to do. You got to tell me, are you sick? Are you in trouble? Look, whatever it is, I can handle it. I can handle it no matter what it is. But I cannot handle the silence.
A crucial turning point in the marriage between Kate Jackson and Michael Onkine in Making Love is one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. In addition to Making Love, we'll also be reviewing The Boat is Full, a drama about German refugees from Nazism in World War II Switzerland. Also, Soldier Girls, a remarkable documentary about women in the Army, and we'll see how it differs from Private Benjamin. And now Roger begins with Nick Nolte in Cannery Row.
This movie is based on John Steinbeck's 1940 novel about some down-and-outers and drifters who lived and loved down by the docks and fish canneries in Monterey, California. Steinbeck's novel shamelessly romanticized the little people in his story, and the big new movie version of Cannery Row does the same thing. The movie stars Nick Nolte as a loner named Doc who lives in a shack by the water working as a freelance marine biologist and brooding over some kind of guilty secret in his past. Deborah Winger is the hooker with a heart of gold who works in a red lighthouse right across the street. They're really in love, but they don't want to admit it to themselves or to each other, so they talk of other things. And in this scene, he tells her about his dream of making a scientific breakthrough. Then the talk turns to more personal matters.
Take a look. You see, I have to fix one of these cultures every half hour. And then mount it on a slide until I have a series, and to show students how sea urchins go from an egg to a complete organism.
What do they want to know that for?
Well, because that's the way people develop. Anyway, I have to do another culture in 2 minutes.
Why don't they just study people?
It'd be a little difficult to kill unborn babies every half hour, wouldn't it?
Hell, I don't know about all this stuff. It's pretty funny business, unborn things and all that.
There are funnier businesses.
Well, I guess you'd be talking about my business now. You don't like my business, do you?
It doesn't matter whether I like your business or not, does it? I mean, it's there, isn't it? I just think it's kind of a sad substitute for love.
Oh, and what do you got, mister? Bugs, snakes? Look at this dump. It stinks. You ain't even got a decent suit of clothes.
Yeah.
But I bet you can't remember when your last hot meal was. You sit here reading starfish, for Christ's sake.
Sea urchins.
What the hell do you think that's a substitute for, huh?
Wait. I do what I want, I live the way I want, and I'm free. Now, do you get that? I'm free, and I do what I want.
Well, who'd want to do this stuff anyway?
Well, who would want to go to bed with anybody that's got $3?
Maybe somebody who needs the $3. And it seems to me I heard something about you writing some great big damn highfalutin paper.
Who told you that?
Everybody knows it, Doc. You want to know why? Because they know you're just fooling yourself. You ain't never going to write no paper. And some of them are even laughing at you.
Who's laughing at me?
Nick Nolte and Deborah Winger are the 2 best things in this movie. The problem is there aren't a lot of other good things in the movie, and that sort of flirtatious love-hate relationship is real familiar from other films. In fact, a whole lot of Cannery Row is real familiar from other films. This is a movie that seems to have been constructed out of stereotype movie characters. Look at this next standard movie scene where the local madam, played by Audra Lindley, tells Doc he ought to make a pass at that girl. You know, she may seem to be a scarlet woman, but in her heart, she's as pure as the driven snow.
Would it do you any harm to make a play for Susie the way you do with them other dames you take out? See, Doc, the way I figure it is, if you was to make a pitch for her like she was a real lady, she might start believing it herself.
Well, what good's that gonna do?
Might get her the hell out of the Bear Flag. Might be she wouldn't want to congregate with no more floozies. Might take a typewriting or telephone operating. I could stop losing money on her.
Well, what about me, Fauna? What the hell am I gonna do with her?
Hell, Doc, you don't marry them other dames, do you? Now, see, once she gets her confidence up, she'll just take a quick powder.
I don't know, Fauna. It seems a little far-fetched.
You don't have to make no pass. Just be nice to her.
I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, after all, this whole movie seems a little far-fetched. Cannery Row asked the following questions. Will Doc and Susie stop fighting long enough to discover they're in love? Will Susie become an honest woman? Will Doc make his scientific breakthrough and become a famous marine biologist? Will the colorful old drunken bums who live on the dock succeed in reuniting Doc and Susie in true love? Will Doc ever be freed from the guilty secret in his past? Well, I'm making the movie sound like a soap opera, and that's a little unfair, but only a little. It has some good things in it, this movie, especially the strong, understated performance by Nick Nolte, who manages somehow to keep his dignity even when he's surrounded by shameless overacting. But the movie sentimentalizes its characters to such a degree they lose substance as people. Cannery Row comes across as a romanticized, whimsical fable. A fable, unfortunately, without any point.
I would agree with you almost word for word. Nolte is at one level. He's an interesting character. The only reason I bothered to watch the picture, other than I was being paid to watch it, is that I'm sitting there interested in where his character is going to go. But around him are these cartoon, comic book characters. There's no question about it. I think you're right to even challenge, it's a Steinbeck novel, so you're supposed to be a little bit intimidated and think that there is a point here. There may be one in the novel, but there isn't one really in this movie. I mean, other than he's supposed to deal with his past in some way, but there's more slapstick to this film than anything else.
Yeah, and apparently you have enough suffering and have enough colorful old eccentric characters around you and a happy ending, and that's a story. Well, I don't believe it. Do you remember in My Fair Lady, Eliza Doolittle's father, who hung around behind the church with all of Alfie, with all the ruffians?
Yes.
There's a whole gang of guys just like that in this movie, and they come on like some kind of a drunken Skid Row Greek chorus.
Yes, but they're not.
They have big hearts, and they have great human insights and understanding and love and empathy, and I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah, the difference is, those in My Fair Lady, that was a supporting character. In this film, these guys are around a lot of the picture.
And that sensibility is the whole film.
Yeah. Our next film, The Boat is Full, is a complete change of pace. It's a powerful World War II drama that is extremely critical of Switzerland's neutrality during the war. Directed by a Swiss citizen, Markus Imhoff, The Boat is Full focuses on Swiss immigration policies that prevented refugees from Nazi Germany from entering or passing through Switzerland. In all, according to reports, only 8,300 persons passed through the Swiss borders. Many others made it to Switzerland only to be captured and returned to Germany and to their certain death. The film follows 7 such refugees. Some are Jewish, some are political prisoners. One is a Nazi soldier who is a deserter, 2 are children, one is a grandfather. They are all given temporary shelter by the wife of a Swiss innkeeper. But when the man of the house spots the refugees, he's furious with his wife and afraid of what will happen if the authorities find out.
Was fällt dir ein überhaupt? Hat noch eins gesagt im Radio, sie befangen zu viel drinnen von denen. Haben überhaupt keine mehr sortieren lassen. Dann hocken sie da gemütlich in der eigenen Küche umeinander, wenn schon da die Hause wären.
Da, sind doch für zahlen alles. Meinst du, was die wert sind?
Wenn sie wollen kaufen, hä? Und überhaupt Silber ist.
Du musst jetzt so tun, wegen einem Stück Brot und ein paar Eier.
Na, zuerst dem Teufel den kleinen Finger geben. Hey, schau, das Servierportemonnaie nicht mehr in der Schublade ist.
Was hab ich immer?
Aber siehst draußen ja selber nicht. Wer weiß, was die angestellt haben, dass du es müssen verschwinden.
Statten, Ostrowski. Herr Flückiger, das ist mein Mann.
Dann sind sie auch noch heikel. Das ist ganz genau, da heute fleischlos ist. Heute haben wir nicht Dienstag.
Wenn's das in
Wo gar nicht hören. Schauen einem so schon genug auf die Finger. Auf die Länge ging das sowieso nicht ohne Merken. Hey, Lotti!
Ja?
Wolltest du den anständigen Znini von dir?
Hör auf! Du musst jetzt also laut rumbrüllen.
Ganz geschwind im Land rufen. Ich habe etwas zu tun da.
Eventually, the innkeeper relents and has a change of heart, allows them to stay. But it's up to the innkeeper's wife to find a way to fool the authorities, who are certain to investigate and send the refugees back. According to Swiss law, people in certain categories could be granted the status of political refugees. So, the heartbreaking problem here is to try to take this mixed bag of people and fit them into the right categories.
Komm. Zeig mal. Der konnte schon Geschwister sein, oder? Wo kommen Sie denn her auf einmal? Kommen Sie, schnell. Das sind Ihre beiden Kinder. Geht das? Wieso? Ihr müsst eine Familie sein, wenn die Polizei kommt. Und Olaf?
Als Vater.
Und wenn wir sagen, der Kleine ist erst 5?
Dann habe ich trotzdem heiraten müssen, mit 12.
Und Sie?
Was schaust du?
Was gibt's denn hier? Kommen Sie. Kommen Sie. So, du bist schon.
Was siehst du?
Bleiben Sie lieber der Großvater.
Ich bin ja das sind meine Enkel.
Aber wieso denn? Die Kinder könnten doch ebenso gut meine sein. Das geht doch.
Wie kann ich einen Schwiegersohn bei der Wehrmacht haben?
Ich brauche nur noch ein paar richtige Hosen.
Geh mit Olaf. Komm, wir verstecken uns. Jetzt kommt ihr nicht mehr weit.
Aber wenn wir dem einfach ehrlich sagen, was uns passiert ist einfach.
Und die Gesetze?
Lassen Sie mich doch der Vater sein.
Wenn Deserteure sowieso bleiben können.
Wir sollten das auf einmal. Warum haben Sie das nicht schon...
Fuchs, schon lang, dass wir alle die rausgelaufenen Nazi füttern müssen, wegen irgendeinem internationalen Gesetz. Und die Leute, wo ihr plagt, werden zurückgeschickt. Und wenn es dann bei uns losgeht, ha? Zum Glück wenigstens, dass man euch einsperrt, ihr Sieche.
This film is exceptionally powerful because it rarely gets maudlin or weepy. We don't see anybody cry or break down in the film. The events just move the refugees along as if they were on some kind of conveyor belt to hell. Some people try to help, many do not. And the film leaves us with the question, what is inside of the people who do help in such a situation that is not inside of those who choose to ignore it? That's quite a question, and The Boat is Full is quite a movie.
We're pretty much in agreement on this one, too. I really like the human elements in the film. I feel that as a film it could be better. At times I felt that the director was taking large chunks of material and just editing them in such a way that the film, it was cutting back and forth between actions in such a way the movie didn't really flow and didn't catch me up as much as I wanted it to. But I really do recommend it. I feel it is a human document. It's a real fine film.
Well, I think that it was better edited than you did, and let me say why. I think that you can really play these films. Obviously, you have the audience won over with this subject. I mean, it's a moving subject if you just tell a simple story. This film was a little harder edged than that. It didn't get into the maudlin category. It keeps playing with the fates of these people, and you see in very specific detail, they could be saved, they could not. They could be, they could not, and then you're not sure where it's going to go. And that, to me, was good direction.
Another interesting thing is that it all takes place in a very quiet, kind of low-key situation. It's Switzerland. In Switzerland, basically, it's peacetime, and these people are talking about regulations, police rules, forms to fill out, the way we do things. And you realize that the underlying thing is put them right back across the border, and they're right, as you said, on a conveyor belt to hell. They're right off to the gas chambers. And that's really the tragic underpinning to this whole story that makes the banal part in Switzerland seem even...
Yeah, it's quite an eye-opener about cute little Switzerland.
Yeah, it sure is. Let's take a look now at a new American documentary that is both one of the funniest and also one of the most thought-provoking studies of the U.S. Army that I've ever seen. The documentary is named Soldier Girls, and it follows a platoon of young women all the way through 14 weeks of basic training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. The movie's kind of a real-life Private Benjamin. Raises questions about whether there might be something in the very nature of women that's subversive to the Army's notion of what makes a good soldier. For example, we see in this scene, the Army is totally unequipped to deal with recruits who can't help but find the whole thing funny.
You want out of the Army, Private Johnson? If that's what it's going to take and you seem to think that I ain't going to do no better,
then stop fooling around and do as you are told. You know that you are to carry your water in your canteen at all times. You're just trying to get over, Private Johnson, and I'm tired of it. I won't have a shammer in my Army.
You understand me?
Yes, Sergeant.
Obviously you don't, because you continue to conduct yourself in such a slipshod fashion.
Get out of the dirt, Johnson!
Anybody else?
Skylab.
I didn't tell you to recover. He meant for you to get your butt out of the dirt. Sergeant Private Johnson requests permission to recover. Recover, Johnson. Sergeant Private formation, Johnson.
Sergeant, what?
Get to the rear of the formation.
Well, her slipshod attitude eventually gets Private Johnson called into the Master Sergeant's office.
Private Johnson, what you come in the Army for?
I don't know, Sergeant.
You don't know?
No.
Why don't you know?
Because all I know is I tried to get out the Army, but my recruiter told me the only way I get out the Army, I get pregnant, and I didn't want to get pregnant.
You had to have a reason to begin with, young lady, and when you signed that paperwork in order to come in the Army. Now, what was that reason?
When I went to sign them paperwork, I was not going to sign them. My recruiter had to come down and talk to me and tell me that he wasn't going to take me home and talk a whole lot of more stuff to me about what he was going to do. That's the only reason I signed them papers.
How'd you get the paperwork started initially?
Because I went and took the Army test. I wanted to come into the Army, but after I found as days passed by and talked to more girls from Mississippi that came into the Army, they told me that basic training was very hard, and I found that I wanted to not go into the Army.
So basically your whole idea then right now, Private Johnson, is you don't want to do anything that might hurt you or is a little bit hard. Is that correct? Is that correct, Private?
Yes, Sergeant.
Well, at least she's honest. Private Debbie Johnson there was the star of Soldier Girls, but she doesn't exactly make the ideal recruit, and eventually she drops out of basic training. The movie also focuses on two other women recruits, one who turns into a good soldier and the other one who doesn't. There are scenes in this movie that raise inescapable questions about the relationships of men and women. For example, when that male sergeant tries to get tough and chew out Private Johnson, it just doesn't seem to work. All the macho put-downs and tough rhetoric just wind up sounding silly. Soldier Girls is a wonderfully original piece of work. It's a great idea for a documentary. It gives us insights into the military that we just plain haven't thought about before. The movie won a first prize in the U.S. Film Festival out in Utah recently, and is opening city by city around the country. It's worth looking for in your town.
I think it's absolutely great, too. It was a lot of fun and sad in parts. The one interesting thing to me, again, this proves that documentaries, if they're done well, and this one is beautifully done, I'm surprised they could get the shots they got. If it's done well, it can beat a fiction film because nobody can write a script and dialogue like we just heard. It's beautifully done. Another thing you say about the difference between men and women, I was in basic training 14 years ago at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. It's the same for the men. It is the same for the men. I mean, there's the people who don't try, the people who do try, the people who want to get out, the people who want to be impressed by these things.
It seems to me if this movie has an insight, though, it's that laughter is totally subversive to basic training. There's that scene where she's trying to keep a straight face, and she can't. And she starts to smile, and it enrages the sergeant, and it breaks up everybody else in the platoon, and suddenly the whole life and death thing about the Army is just lost.
We've seen that in the history of movie comedies, though, when laughter can break up the natural.
There are great comic moments in this film, too. For example, the one girl who's afraid of her gun, and the sergeant says, that gun isn't going to hurt you. It doesn't ever hurt anybody. Right.
The other thing is the whole thing with the sergeants. I still don't, I didn't know it when I was in the Army, and I don't even know it as I watch this. Are these people for real? Are they just the best actors in the world? I mean, they're marvelous creatures, these drill sergeants.
It's a good film.
Okay. I guess the best way to describe our next film, Making Love, is to say that it does for the subject of male homosexuality what the film Guest Who's Coming to Dinner did for racial intermarriage and race relations. In other words, it's an entertaining first step at understanding a difficult social issue. Michael Onkine stars a young married California doctor who has been repressing his own strong homosexual feelings. He's married, but one day he meets a young writer, Harry Hamlin, and they have a one-night stand that later turns into more than either one of them expected. Here's the beginning of that first night together.
Okay, I admit it. I have done some experimenting.
Like what?
A little bit of everything. You name it.
You name it.
Okay. The truth is, I have gotten into a lot of different scenes. I'm a writer. I have to open myself up to new things, expand my horizons.
Why don't you just say it?
I'm gay.
Thank you.
So, tell me about your mysteries, my friend. How much longer are you going to wait?
Wait?
Well, life's too short to play games.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the eyes, the probing, the impulse to have dinner. After a while, you develop an instinct, Doc. You want to talk about it? It's easier when you talk about it. I know.
And talk about it he does. Onking finally brings himself to tell his wife, played by Kate Jackson, about his feelings. They've been married for 8 years.
So tell me, what is it?
I don't believe it. I've gone over this, and I've rehearsed it, and now I don't know how to say it.
Just say it.
I find that I'm attracted to men. I suppose that I have been most of my life, but I never knew what it was, or maybe I just never admitted it or allowed it to come through before. Claire, I don't know where these feelings come from, but the fact is that I have them, and I've got to stop denying it.
Gotta call Barbara. She wants to know if we can have dinner with them on Saturday.
Did you hear what I just told you?
Look, what should I tell them?
Claire, listen to me. I have stopped denying it. I've been with someone.
In some ways, the Kate Jackson role is the most interesting in this film. She stands in for us, the audience. For a TV actress, she's most impressive, and she really sustains the film's credibility. The sex scenes in the film are quite tame, just a couple of kisses, a massage, but this film is not trying to break ground in any visual way. It's after new emotional territory, and on that score, I think it succeeds beautifully by focusing on 3 different aspects of homosexuality. The heretofore heterosexual male who is suppressing his homosexual feelings, that's Michael Onking, of course. The homosexual stud who can't make a commitment to anyone. He's trapped in a physical game, that's Harry Hamlin. And finally, the person, in this case the wife, who sees homosexuality as some kind of threat, something wrong. All of these roles are beautifully performed, and that's why I think Making Love works so well as an emotional drama.
Well, I don't think it works at all as an emotional drama. You
Surprise.
compared it to Guess Who's Coming for Dinner, and I think this does for homosexuality about what Guess Who's Coming for Dinner did for interracial understanding, which is it says, in the best of all possible worlds,
yes,
if perfect and idealized people got together, they would work out things as best as they could. It doesn't say anything about real life, I don't think.
Well,
and it's so written.
Well,
I constantly felt that these people were reading dialogue. There's one exchange in the movie where they say, well, what about passion? Well, what about loyalty? Well, what about betrayal? Well, I mean, lines like that just made me cringe.
Well, Roger, you are dealing with a subject that has not been dealt very well in the history of Hollywood films. And when
Nor
it gets
has it been dealt with very well yet.
Yes, well, I disagree on that one. But I think this is a beginning. And I must say, just the scene that we played seemed to me to be capturing real feelings. The confusion of the woman, some kind of denial, she makes the phone call to make the plans, that, disassociation with what's really going on. This guy is obviously having a tough time in the first scene that we looked at and working through that. A little bit of tenderness on the part of the other guy. Roger, I thought this film was very true in its feelings, and I think you're really being rough on it for not being the perfect film.
I think what you're saying is, gee, since a film like this should be made and one has been made, it's a good thing that this film is.
No, but a couple of weeks ago we did a film about another homosexual film called Taxi Zum Klo, a West German film. This is not the first. I think this is a very good dramatic
last week
story.
we did a Hollywood film called Personal Best, which is about 2 women homosexual. That was about their lives, about their feelings, about what they did as human beings, in addition to the fact that they had a certain sexual orientation.
It was a different movie,
Roger. This movie is just about the fact of homosexuality, and when that is revealed, that's the deal. The structure of this film, from a plot point of view, is about as subtle as Poseidon Adventure.
I think it's
the
much
happy
better than
cruise,
that.
the gathering storm, the crisis, redemption, the new dawn. It's like a daytime soap opera.
Well, time out. That bark is from Sparky the Wonder Dog, which means it's time for Dog of the Week, the week's worst movies.
Well, my dog this week is an amazing financial success named Private Lessons. It's a low-budget, relatively harmless little soft-core sex film that has already grossed something like $20 million around the country. The movie stars Sylvia Crystal, and you remember her, Gene, as the star of Emmanuel, which was one of your guilty pleasures not long ago.
Like that.
She plays a new housemaid who teams up with an unscrupulous chauffeur in a plot to blackmail a rich family's teenage kid into handing over $10,000. The plot requires her to seduce the boy, and she brings a certain sweetness and charm to the assignment. But the sex scenes don't work because every time Sylvia Crystal does something seductive, the adolescent hero goes into such a routine of eye-popping and throat-clearing and foot-scraping and lame excuses, we're more embarrassed than he is. If the sex scenes are a disappointment, the second half, which is a thriller, is a totally idiotic. I understand a lot of teenage kids are trying to talk their parents and letting them see this R-rated film, and sorry, but I can't recommend it. But, you know, I can't understand why a lot of teenage kids would want to see it.
Well, you know, it's funny. I saw a lot of kids sneak into the film underage. They can always get into the R-rated pictures, and they told me it was repetitious, so I think they would agree with you that it is a dog material. My dog this week is a movie called Super Fuzz, a cops and robbers comedy that is similar to the current Chevy Chase comedy called Modern Problems. Terrence Hill plays a Miami cop in Super Fuzz who comes in contact with nuclear radiation, and suddenly he's endowed, just like Chevy Chase, with superpowers, X-ray vision, the ability to fall from tall buildings in a single bounce and walk on water. One fall from the 20th floor is funny. More than one is not funny, and that's what makes Super Fuzz a dog, much like your dog, Roger. Super Fuzz has an idea that's worth maybe about 40 minutes of film. Unfortunately, it runs on, repeating itself for almost another hour.
Well, so much for the dogs. Let's take another look at the main movies on this program. Gene and I both voted no on Cannery Row, the elaborate new film version of the John Steinbeck classic. We thought Nick Nolte gave a good leading performance, but that the movie was otherwise too romanticized and preposterous to be effective. 2 yes votes, though, for The Boat is Full, a new film about refugees from Nazi Germany up against the heartless efficiency of Switzerland's wartime neutrality. 2 more yes votes for Soldier Girls, the wonderful new documentary that examines the basic training experiences of women in the volunteer U.S. Army. It's playing the country city by city. Look for it in your area. And we split on Making Love, the film about a married man who discovers he's a homosexual. Gene votes yes. He thought the movie was an interesting introduction to the subject. I vote no. I thought the movie was shallow and insipid.
Well, we obviously disagree, and we should talk more about that film maybe on another show. Well, that's all for this week. Next time on Sneak Previews, we'll take a look at 4 new movies, including Shoot the Moon, starring Diane Keaton and Albert Finney, in the story of a marriage in crisis, Montenegro, an offbeat comedy with Susan Anspach, in the story of a marriage in crisis, and One from the Heart, starring Nastasia Kinski in Francis Coppola's romantic fantasy of a couple in crisis. Join us next time on Sneak Previews. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.